Okay, I want to touch upon one of the channels that I've talked about, that I've called progressive and left and so on and so forth. But but I've also had questions about it, and I've also stated that I've had questions and issues with this particular channel, and I've even called out the creator of the channel, and it's a YouTube channel. It's a famous channel. It's TYT. But there have been too many inconsistencies with Cenk Uygur and TYT that I'm literally going to unsubscribe from them. I had considered on several occasions of not only subscribing, but even with my incredibly insufficient financial situation, I had considered dishing out the 5 or 6, and now it's $9. To to subscribe to be a member rather than just a subscriber on YouTube. And now I know for a fact that I don't want to be a member of TYT. That I will do not want to fund TYT. And I've said I you know that I've said good things about TYT, and I've also said that I've had questions about TYT, but the the leadership of TYT and Cenk Uygur, he calls himself a progressive. He calls his channel the Homo Progressive, but as I said, I've had too many, and recently he's made blatant remarks that basically demonstrates that he is not indeed progressive. I think he is not even. I think he is one of those quote unquote moderate liberals, and on certain things such as his foreign policy aspect, I think he is very much a centrist, leaning even towards being kind of hawkish. Now, I know you hear those words and you think, well, Cenk isn't a war hawk. He may not state being a war hawk, but his insinuations with his comments seems war hawkish to me. Now he may not come out and right out and say it, but that's a trick that the mainstream, the corporate media that he always and the TYT group always state. Except, why is he? Why does he keep using the word dictator? Why does he? Why does he keep equating it, even though he states on his own channel about the record of the United States and how the United States and the West blow any other nation out of the water for human rights. Saudi Arabia has a horrible track record, but the U.S. blows Saudi Arabia out of the water. It blows the United Arab Emirates out of the water. It blows North Korea out of the water. It blows China out of the water. It blows Russia out of the water. And so, a truly evolved progressive understands that there are horrible leaders out there. But the thing is progressive people understand that that we, well, not we, and I got to stop using this narrative. It's not we. It's the criminals with legitimacy, the ones who have titles and labels, who work in government, who work in business, in the corporate corporate sector, who have shareholders, who control more and more, creating megalomaniacal monopolies, who are destroying destroying people on the domestic front and carrying it out on the international front, going to the level of narcissistic, megalomaniac, murderous, rapacious rampage that is literally killing the planet. So, there's a lot of good things that TYT says, and I agree with it. But when it comes to talking about foreign policy, TYT has a narrative, and Cenk has that narrative, and he is kind of dragging some of the others that he has on the show towards that. Jimmy Dore, who's part of the TYT crew, I do not include him into it. And Kyle Klinsky, I don't. Kyle Klinsky is part of the TYT, but he goes across the grain. So, and then there's a humanist report, but Mike doesn't actually. He kind of crosses the grain with TYT as well on several things. So there's just been one too many things that I think has been egregious. John, one of the main guys, his take during the time when the first came around that Trump was going to go first round, wanted to talk to Kim Jong-un, and John went on this rampaging rant that came off as being anti-peace and anti everything, and he sounded more like what you would hear on Fox. And so there was nothing progressive, there was nothing woke, there was nothing enlightened about that. Cenk recently had Christine on with Women Across the DMZ. And the way he interviewed, the way he phrased things, and pushing, but Trump is, not Trump, but Kim Jong is such a dictator, and he's so bad, and North Korea is so bad, and so on and so forth. But, he didn't use those words, but that's what the vibe that he was giving off. And Christine Ahn, to her credit, explained in such a way that it put complete falsehood with what Cenk Uygur was doing what I consider to be the establishment narrative. So, and then there's Venezuela, the comments he's made with Venezuela, and then there's an absence of reporting on things that are actually counter to what is actually happening down there, and Cenk, either glosses over it or doesn't include it. It's like the more pertinent information, and Anna has been doing it as well, and I can say that perhaps some of his people are not actually saying it because they're trying to make a point, and they're forgetting about these things. But there are some clear things that that TYT should have been reporting on the Venezuela story that were extremely pertinent, and there would be no confusion as to who is the one who is the one that's the bad guy, and that's the U.S. The U.S. Political leadership. One thing that the people like Max Booth, Abby Martin, I mean not Max Booth. I'm sorry, that's a different establishment criminal hack. Max Blumenthal and I forget Ben Norton, Mike Peisner, even reporters from RT who have had boots on the ground in Venezuela. There's the Intercept. There are so many very pertinent caveats that that basically says, and you know what, the ones that I just mentioned have all in common is that they said that Maduro is kind of incompetent with certain things, but a dictator Maduro is not, and he's not the criminal crooks. He's not anywhere near the criminal crooks that the U.S. criminal crooks are. And most of what the things that can be labeled at Maduro is kind of incompetence. He's not this corrupt crook. He's just incompetent. There are certain things but part of that incompetence also, and this is something that's been pointing out, is that it's because of the sanctions. It's because of the the social issues, and largely due to the traitorous rebels. The plain fact of the matter is, one thing that should be made clear is, if Maduro was such a dictator, and if he was such a bully, then why is Guaido not in jail? Or why isn't he riddled with bullet holes? But that's not happening. And as for those that even TYT has brought up, those supposed oppositions that were arrested and jailed, well, guess what? The courts actually had them arrested, not Maduro, because they got these guys because they were on the in the media, which the criminal rebels get support from. They were talking sedition, they were talking treason, they were fomenting violent rebellion, and so on and so forth, and calling for violence on the street. That's why they were arrested. That's why they were put in jail. And then Democracy Now!, interestingly enough, Democracy Now!, I'm sorry, not Democracy Now!, I forget. I'm sorry, Al Jazeera had on one of those guys that were arrested, that was gonna be arrested, and he fled the country. And Al Jazeera had him on, and one of the guests that Al Jazeera had on, I forget that that asshole's name, but one of the guests, and it wasn't even somebody from Venezuela. It was someone that had actually done his homework, and he basically called out the guy on Al Jazeera and said, "Hey, you have a warrant out for your arrest. You were on." And he goes, "You were on because I've seen you on TV. I've seen you doing what you did down in Venezuela." So, in Democracy Now! Even covered that when they had the interview with one of the representatives of Maduro's government, and they touched upon that. The political and Democracy Now! Even used political arrests and so on and so forth. So, and like TYT should be mentioning with Venezuela that it's the right wing, and TYT covered that story about how the quote unquote humanitarian aid was burnt by people paid by the rebellion, by the U.S. and other coup backers, paid these Venezuelans to burn up the humanitarian, the quote unquote humanitarian aid, when in fact there was, and New York Times covered only one part of it. RT and Max Blumenthal and even Al Jazeera and Press TV all showed that it wasn't just one errant piece of gas soaked cloth that landed. There was an actual Molotov cocktail thrown purposely onto the truck to burn it up. And then there was other information that was taken, that was found stating from the coup manufacturers what their intentions were. So these are the things that TYT didn't cover. That is readily available. They could have looked it up, but they didn't. And TYT likes to sound like that they're fair and balanced. That they'll call out their own mistakes and so on and so on. But I've been noticing it, and it's just happened way too many times, and and that's unfortunate because TYT does, in fact, report on a lot of good things. But I've also been noticing that they have been having a tendency to parrot and push corporate talking points and narratives. And so I just had it with TYT. And I can't condone TYT any longer. I won't be. I'll be unsubscribing. I'll still keep an eye on TYT, but I'm unsubscribing, and that's because I don't want. I want them to know my displeasure with it. And you know what? I'll even be completely fair and say maybe perhaps Cenk Uygur and TYT are doing this unknowingly because they're trying to push for progressive values, and they mistakenly think that that parroting some of this not mainstream, but corporate propaganda machine will bring in more. Perhaps that's what it is, but that's still no excuse to be doing with that, because you can't be progressive. You can't be on the right side of things if you must copy the enemy and the enemy of the people, and if you must push the propaganda of the enemy.